Hi there, and welcome to Growing Together. I'm Randy Potter, and this is a show where you and I can learn the fundamentals of gardening as we learn and grow together. So last month in February, we visited a really cool spot in Ernst Conservation Seeds up in Meadville, Pennsylvania, and I was really excited to learn all about their bulk seed planting, harvesting, processing, distributing, and it was really cool for me to see how, a local business that a lot of people don't even know about makes such a great impact on the world in ways that we don't realize, and does a lot of great work for our environment and native species and pollinators and things like that. And it was really cool to see how important seeds are. And ever since then, I've been thinking about seeds, and it's amazing to me how much we can get out of such little tiny things from, flowers and all kinds of plants that obviously we like to grow in our gardens, and of course, things that we like to eat, which is certainly something that I'm very fond of. And you can even eat, obviously, the vegetables that you grow from seeds, or the seeds themselves. I love some sunflower seeds on a nice sunny summer day. And we've got a nice sunny day here today. It's springtime in March, and even though it's still a little chilly, I'm starting to get that spring fever and really looking forward to growing some plants of my own. So since I've had seeds on the brain and we learned about some seeds, I thought this month would be a good chance to learn about how you and I can grow some of our own seeds and really get some hands-on experience and learn some new stuff. So one of my favorite ways to enjoy a beautiful spring day like today is to go to a local greenhouse, or one of my favorites, Soergel Greenhouses in Wexford, Pennsylvania. And I thought you and I might get a chance to check it out and see what's happening in the greenhouses this time of year. So why don't you come on with me and we'll see what we can learn. All right, so we made our way into the greenhouses here, and I've stumbled upon Adam Voll, the man in charge of starting all the seeds for the farm here at Soergel's. So as you can imagine, that's a whole lot of seeds, a lot of different kinds of produce and things like that the farm's growing. So I guess I've got some questions for you if you don't mind taking the time to share some of your knowledge with me. And I guess my first kind of question is, what all do you grow here at Soergel's?
We try to get a variety of everything. So a lot of the stuff we have out in the fields are between our tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and zucchini and melons and onions and lettuce. Try a little bit of anything that we need to get that early jump on, and you can't direct seed into the field. We'll start by seed. Okay, yeah, so now's a good time of year. Like I said, it was chilly outside. As you can see, we moved inside, had to drop all air. It's nice and warm in our greenhouse, especially on a sunny day like today. So that's a lot of different things that you're growing, and you talked about starting some stuff sooner rather than later. And I know that there's a great deal of planning that goes into that. Yeah, for us too, to make sure we have kind of a consistent crop through the season, your planting dates are very important to us. So we try to keep track of when we plant them, and then we kind of know when we can get out to the field, which is sometimes dictated by the weather. Sure. It kind of can throw that off, but we try to plant certain things 2 or 3 plantings a year, so we have them kind of spaced out so we always have that optimal size. With lettuce like this, we can kind of see here. So this lettuce here, this half was planted about a week ago. This was 2 weeks ago. This side here was 3 weeks ago, and this was about 4 weeks ago. So this is actually for hydroponic. So we have some of our hydroponic stuff. That's why it's kind of a different soil. It's a rock wool, actually.
Okay.
So what we'll do, we'll put these into kind of a gutter system, and we'll start them growing. But this way, I have a consistent crop, a fresh, optimum crop the whole way through the season. So I'll about every week we'll put a new batch in, so we always have something that's perfectly ready to eat.
Cool. And I mean, I obviously you guys are doing that to kind of an extreme degree, but I can imagine that even gardeners at home and stuff might be able to kind of plan and space their seeds so that they could have their own crop of lettuce each week for
yeah, a lot of stuff is like that. We even do that with like tomatoes and stuff too, just to get as one plant is starting to go down a little bit, you have a next one that's kind of coming in, taking its place. You don't have to do that. Sometimes the season can run fairly long, but it's good to kind of put a couple plantings in and you kind of refresh it, and especially if they're home garden, and even for us as well, some of the disease will kind of set in, and sometimes it's easier to take it out and start a fresh one in. And kind of gets you that little bit better crop.
Okay, yeah, so there's kind of a little bit of a trial and error with seeds, and it's a little bit more, gives you a little bit more leniency just because, they're so affordable, easy to start, you can work with them, and do a lot of things with them. So that's really cool. It's really cool to see the difference in growth, like you said, and just how quickly, I think seeds are really fun too, because it's like a really dynamic aspect of plants.
Yeah.
So another thing I was going to ask about the planting, you mentioned, you got some lettuce here, and I know that's one that people start early, even home growers and stuff. I know you mentioned that you're going to be planting these in a greenhouse for hydroponics, but I know that some things are better off early versus later. Do you have any, kind of recommendations, or how does the farm go about deciding what to plant when?
So a lot of like your cole crops and stuff like that, your
Okay.
kale and your broccoli and that sort of stuff is more of a cooler season crop. So those ones you'll want to start earlier. They can take a little bit of the colder temperatures, a little bit of a frost. You still want to kind of keep them protected, but you can get those in the garden a little bit earlier. Same with onions right here. You can get those out into the fields a little bit earlier. Your tomatoes and that sort of stuff are what you're going to be a little bit later. But yeah, you can get stuff going here pretty quick, and that's what's kind of neat on, like we talked about, some of the varieties. Some varieties, even in the same thing, like even lettuce, for example, some varieties are pretty good early on, and other ones are a little more heat tolerant, so they can actually do better in the summer. So that's why you can kind of do those different plantings too, because you actually get different seeds that will respond towards the temperature and actually give you the best chance of survival and the better crop.
That's cool. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I think is really interesting getting to see the farm do that is, there's always something happening. You guys have gotten so good over the years of really maximizing potential and knowing exactly what to do when. And also how to do things a little bit differently. That was kind of another question. I know you mentioned the rock wool here, right, for the hydroponics versus like more of a, I think you use a seed starting mix, you said, for something like this. Yep. What else are you doing differently for like, a lettuce versus, another type of seed, planting them deeper, shallower, stuff like that?
A lot of them are fairly similar, but yeah, you got to be careful of your seed depth. Some of the, like your real small seeds, you don't want to cover them with a whole lot because they don't have the energy to really push through a heavy soil or a large amount. So that's why some of them are pretty much right on the surface. Like this lettuce even here with this rock wool, there's nothing that actually covers it. As long as you keep it moist, that seed will actually sprout down in. So there's actually nothing on top of this seed whenever we plant it. This one was only 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of soil is all you really need on top. Some of your bigger seeds, like we have here, like these are a cucumber. Those are a little bit heavier seed. They can actually go in a little bit deeper, but again, they don't have to be real deep.
Okay.
So it's pretty simple.
That's cool. So, maybe some slight variances, but more or less it seems like you're kind of monitoring, the same factors, light, moisture. You make minor adjustments for different things as needed. But we've talked about that a lot in the show, really considering your light, your moisture. But I know that temperature can also be another factor in seed starting. What do you guys do to think about and control, temperature? Yeah,
so a lot of the seed starting, they kind of like the soil needs to be a little bit warmer. So we usually have ours kind of set between 70 to 80 degrees. So what we would actually do is put a little bit of heat underneath the bench to keep the bench warmer, to keep the soil warmer, and that'll actually help the germination. So if we can keep that more consistent, then we have a better idea when everything's actually going to germinate. It'll germinate when it's colder soils, but it'll take longer. So for us, if we're trying to hit that certain date, we kind of want to know where we're at, so we try to keep things as consistent as possible. But if you can put a little bit of heat on the base of it, we also use like the electric heat mats to kind of keep a nice consistent temperature, and that'll give you a better results and a more consistent germination.
Okay, yeah, so maybe for a home grower, not something that's necessary, but certainly helps, especially when you're at a farm where that schedule is really important, and especially the germination rate. I know I've started some seeds at home, and my trays don't always end up so full, which is okay for you home growers, but you can definitely see, the difference of when you guys really pay attention to those details like the heat and stuff, and how much of a higher success rate you can get with your seeds. So that's pretty cool to see. I know another question I've had when starting seeds too is how many to plant. It's kind of cool to see different sizes of seeds. You get some big old beans and stuff, but then you get some little tiny herb seeds and stuff like that, and I'm like, do I really put one of those? Do I put a handful in? Do you have any kind of quick tips on how you guys, especially with so many seeds, are you guys just tossing them? How do you guys do that?
Now most of it is we still plant everything singular, except like this one here, like a basil. We kind of like to put this. We'll put 5, 6, or kind of whatever falls out of your hand at times. Sometimes, but we can do that because they don't have a real heavy root system, and as you're doing that, that makes a nice little potted plant as well, and you can kind of trim off the pieces. Like your herbs and that sort of stuff, we'll put a few more seeds. But like, especially like these onions and stuff like that, if I put more than one seed in, I usually try to single that out because they kind of fight against each other. I'm trying to go for, especially for onions, trying to go for a nice big bulb. And if you have two side by side, they're going to kind of compete too much against each other. And that's a lot with the lettuce and your tomatoes and that sort of stuff too. They'll kind of compete against each other, maybe not give you that real great big plant. You can still plant two at a seed, but you can also kind of pull them apart gently without hurting the roots. And then you can almost retransplant them separately as well.
Right, okay, so like you can kind of thin them.
Yeah.
Because I know I've made the mistake before of having a few plants come up and get really excited. I've got, oh, I got, you know, a few plants in that one cell, but you're saying that maybe, you know, it might be better just to, you know, to make the hard move and pull those apart and keep them each individual.
And sometimes we'll have doubles and I like the lettuce and stuff here, and I'll go through and just pull them out because it's not going to give me that real nice big head of lettuce if you don't. So, but it's always, like a lot of them, we always do a little bit more than what we kind of need. You're going to have some that just aren't going to germinate, and that's normal.
Yeah.
A lot of the seed packets and stuff, even that I get, some of them are 90 to 95% germination rate. So you know you're going to lose some on every flat. So you always kind of do a little bit more. Again, seeds aren't terribly expensive.
Right.
So you'd rather have a little too much than not enough, because especially with this, you can easily tell the difference that if I miss a week, that's gonna throw me back pretty far.
Right.
So if I don't plant enough and my germination rate isn't good and I don't have enough, I can't make that up. You missed it. So for me, especially as a farmer, we're selling it, you miss those sales for that week. So if I miss a planting, I miss the entire sale for that week. I can't make that up as we go.
Yeah, yeah. And that's how I've found that a lot of gardening is the more you can do to prepare yourself and set yourself up for success, it's a lot easier than trying to kind of catch up on the back end. Well, one last question I have for you. I mean, it's a nice, bright, sunny day here in the garden center or at the greenhouses. But unfortunately, you know, most people don't have greenhouses. Do you guys do anything special to get, you know, more light? Do you do anything special for lighting these plants? I know you mentioned, you know, some kind of things you think about with different plants, but what are you doing in terms of your lighting? Yeah,
especially this early in the season, we don't have enough direct sunlight to really get things to go. So what they'll do, they'll kind of start to stretch. They're kind of growing towards the light. So we will add supplemental lighting as well, just to try to give it a few more hours per day. They need a little more than we have now. Another couple months, we'll get far enough, we'll have enough direct sunlight you can get by without it. But whenever you're first starting these seeds, especially keeping them in, you kind of want enough light there so they don't stretch and give you a real leggy plant. You'll see that a lot if they're sitting on your windowsill and they don't get enough sunlight. They'll kind of stretch. You can kind of see how plants will kind of grow towards the light. Yeah. That's kind of the same things. You always want to make sure they have enough, especially this time of the year.
Okay, so more light, the better, pretty much.
You're not going to hurt it with that,
Okay, yeah. I can't overlight the seeds at this point.
No, not right now.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, well, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing everything about the seeds. You know, you guys are just getting started. I know you got a lot of planting ahead of you. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share your seed starting knowledge with us. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so why don't you guys come on with me, and we'll see if we can try planting some of our own seeds.
Armstrong.
Hi, my son just got home and he said that his friend's house has this glowing blue dome.
It's not really glowing. Zoom's enhanced Wi-Fi constantly monitors your network for suspicious activity.
Oh, so the dome blocks viruses and malware from my devices.
Actually, it's Zoom.
And my house will make those cool sounds?
Sure. Cool sound effects too. No extra charge.
Awesome.
Control, coverage, and security. Zoom. Internet made easy.
All right, so after our talk with Adam, I'm really excited to get down and dirty and start trying to grow some of our own seeds. So first, I've kind of got everything laid out for you of things that I think might be helpful and some things that you definitely need to start your seeds. Like Adam said, and like we've talked about before in the show, the more you do to set yourself up for success and think ahead, the better off your plants are going to be in the long run. So I've laid out some things that I think are going to be really helpful for you to start your seeds. The first thing you're going to need is a container of some sort. Now, you can use all different kinds of things. A lot of people like to reuse, you know, old, yogurt cups or old egg cartons. You know, I think that's great. If you can reuse something like that and make it work for you, that's awesome. Go for it. Other people like to use things that are made more specifically for starting seeds. So that's going to be what I'm going to show you here today. What we use here in the garden center in the greenhouse is similar to what Adam showed you before, kind of these big trays with a whole lot of little kind of cells in there, they call them. So you can obviously get a whole ton of plants in a small space. And these are nice and convenient for a greenhouse where you're going to be planting a lot of plants, and really you just pop your plant out and put it in a pot. But for me at home, I like to have a little bit of a different setup. What I like to do is actually have some individual pots. You know, again, you can use whatever, you know, will hold dirt, basically, is all you need to start seeds. But I'm a big fan of, you know, they have Jiffy pots, or cow pots they're called, which is made of a kind of a biodegradable material there, so that when you plant it, you actually don't have to take it out of the pot. You can just plant the whole pot. So those are kind of neat. That's what I'm going to use today. There's also these fun little ones that if you add some water to, they'll kind of expand. Those are really fun, especially if you're starting seeds with kids. You just pour some water in there, wait about 10 minutes, and they'll super absorb all this water, and you kind of have like that little puck will turn into a little grow pot for you. So that's really cool. But like I said, we're going to use the Jiffy pots today, that's what I like to use. So personal preference, the more you start your seeds, the more you'll learn what you like, what you don't like, and that's all part of gardening. You know, we're all learning here together, and it's also an art. You know, there's right and wrong ways to do things to an extent, but there's also your way to do things. It's your garden, your seeds. So we certainly want to help you be successful, but don't be afraid to be you. So I'm going to pull out some of my pots here. They come in different sizes. You can get some bigger ones. You can get smaller ones. You can get little actual individual flower pots. I kind of like this size right here because I think it gets your plant to a nice size where it's ready to be transplanted. You know, not too big, not too small. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these into a plastic tray. Again, this is a tray made for seed starting, very affordable at your local garden center. I got mine here at Soergel's. And it's just exactly what it says. It's just a plastic tray to collect your water. But what's nice about these is a lot of times the manufacturers will make them with seed starting in mind, so that you'll see these pots really fit, you know, perfectly in there, which is just kind of nice to keep everything contained, especially with some of our later steps, as you'll see here. So I'm going to break out my pots, and look at that. See, like I said, fits pretty much just perfectly in there. So that's going to be great. And what's also really nice about these trays is that a lot of times they're made with a top for them. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can see that fits there perfectly on that. If you don't have that, no problem. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. So now that I have all my pots laid out, I need a growing medium. Now you can grow in any kind of potting soil, although I do recommend, if you can find a seed starting mix, try it out because it's really made to optimize seed starting. You know, it's a really fine soil typically, and sometimes it'll have a little bit of seed starting fertilizer, which is good because you want to have maybe a little fertilizer to get things started, but you don't want to over fertilize. If you put too much fertilizer in your seeds, they're tender. They're just little young seeds, and you can burn them. Actually, it's a little too much salt. So don't go crazy with fertilizer. I trust seed starting mixes. There's a lot of good ones out there on the market. I prefer Coast of Maine's seed starting mix. It's organic, and I find that it really is a effective material. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill these up. Another thing you want to keep in mind with your seed starting mix is that you want it to be moist. If you have a pre-moistened mix, it's going to be more effective for you. Seeds like moisture. That's like really the number one thing that's going to tell your seed, hey, it's time to wake up, we got to start growing, is going to be that moisture. Yes, temperature and light certainly will contribute to that, but moisture is your number one thing. In fact, that's sometimes why with some seeds people will say to soak them, especially with larger seeds like beans and things like that. You might want to soak them overnight to plant those because that water is going to activate the enzymes and just kind of kickstart those seeds. And again, you don't have to. You could just plant in soil, and eventually that moisture will typically be enough to start the seeds. It just takes longer. So again, if you're trying to stay on schedule like Adam, or even just for your own home gardening needs, some pre-soaking can be a good step. But this is a nice seed mix that's already pretty moist, so I'm just going to evenly cover my pots there. You don't need to be too precise. Don't be afraid of getting a little dirty. That's part of the fun. All right, so pretty well set up now. Next thing we need, of course, are seeds. So it's still a little early in the spring, so I might be thinking about starting lettuce or some onions or something like that, but I don't know, I have some spring fever and I'm really itching towards the things that I like to eat the most. So I've got some tomatoes here, Cherokee Purple is one of my favorite tomatoes, and some lemon basil. I love lemon basil. One of the cool things about seeds that Adam even mentioned for farmers, but also for home growers, is that it really opens up all kinds of different varieties for you. You know, you might not be able to find a specific variety at a garden center as a plant, but when you're talking about seeds, they're super easy to ship. You know, they're super easy to stock for stores, so you'll find a whole lot more variety both in store and online. So what I'm going to do with my basil seeds here is I'm just going to very carefully open that packet, and the reason I'm doing that is because basil seeds are really tiny. And this is one I wanted to show you because sometimes, you know, people worry about digging a hole and digging so deep or planting one seed. And we talked about that a little bit with Adam, where in most cases, you know, one seed really is all you need. And in fact, it's ideal. Whereas the basil, I'm just going to kind of dig a little divot. You know, I'm not digging a big hole, just making a little imprint with my finger. All right. If you bury them too deep, you're creating more material that your plant, your tender little young plant, is going to have to push through to grow. So maybe just a light covering is all you need. And what I do with this, rather than, you know, I don't have the most nimble of fingers, and these are little tiny seeds. So rather than picking them out and trying to plant, I open my seed packet very carefully so that I can kind of just use that as my tool. And what I'm going to do is shake those seeds down there very carefully and just give it a couple taps. And that creates a really nice funnel. And if you just kind of tap it in real nice like that, you'll be able to just tap out a few seeds at a time. And trust me, I've learned from experience that this really is a time saver, and you won't get seeds all over the floor. And it's a great way to kind of keep things all contained for you. So I'm just going to tap, you know, maybe 5 to 8 seeds in each little cell like that, just a little bit. Now again, for a lot of seeds, you want one at a time. For basil, we'll do a little handful because that won't hurt the plants. They won't be fighting necessarily over their resources. So I'm going to tap in 2 trays worth of those. Still got some stuck there in the bottom. We'll tap those out. All right. And that packet's about perfect for about a third of my tray, which is exactly what I was hoping for, so that's good. So now I'm just going to gently cover those, again, not burying them, just kind of gently tap them down like so. Okay, now, if I were to do this whole tray of basil, that'd be great, and as much as I love basil, might be a little overkill for me. So I'm going to go ahead and plant some tomatoes in here real quickly. And I would say that as a tip for you home gardeners, you know, start small. You know, a lot of gardeners get really excited and enthusiastic, which I am certainly guilty of. But with seeds especially, you got to remember, these are going to grow into full-size plants. So if you plant 100 tomato seeds, tomato plants can get pretty big, and you're going to, you know, need to be figuring out where you want to put those. So you just keep that in mind. I guess think about your space, because eventually these seeds are going to get big. The basil is not too big of an issue. I like to have my herbs, you know, on a windowsill or just the back patio somewhere. But tomatoes, I probably won't go too crazy with. Now here's some that I'm going to want maybe 1 seed at a time. So I am going to go ahead and pop those in my hand because they're a little bigger, a little more manageable. And again, just like with the basil, I'm just going to drop it in there, not too deep, not worried about planting it, you know, X inches or anything like that. Most seeds, it's not too big of an issue. You might want to check your seed packaging. The packaging is always your friend. You know, companies want your plants to grow so that you buy more, so trust the packaging. They're there to help you. If your certain variety says to do that, trust it and do that. But also, you know, trust yourself. You learn as you go, and the more you do this, the more you're going to kind of refine your techniques. And don't be afraid, as always, don't be afraid to experiment, try new things. That's really one of the most fun things about seeds, is it's a great way to try new plants, because they're pretty inexpensive. You know, germination rates, again, Adam said, even the best seeds, 95% germination rate, so it's kind of understood. You're not going to have a 100% success rate, so, you know, use that to your advantage. Don't be afraid to try some things out. Don't be afraid of failure, because failure is really the only way you're going to get to any success, because you learn from that failure. So just going to kind of tap those down there. Again, not worried about burying them too much. Like Adam said, with his lettuce, he doesn't even bury those at all. So that's not my biggest concern. My biggest concerns are light, moisture, and temperature. So we've got my nice seeding mix. We've got some seeds in there. All right, now I'm going to add a little bit of moisture. You can certainly, you know, water with a watering can if you'd like. But I typically recommend to people, especially after just planting, before there's any roots there to hold those seeds, is I recommend you just take a mister and you give it a really good misting. All right, you know, let that water soak down in there. Again, the moisture is going to be a big factor in getting these seeds started. So I want to keep this really nice and moist, kind of like a wet sponge. I don't want my plants to sit in a pool of water, but I also don't want them to dry out. So I'm gonna try and keep it as consistently like a wet sponge as I can. And for the sake of time, I'll show you the next few steps here. So what's really nice about these plastic trays is that a lot of them come with a cover. If you don't have a cover, you can always just wrap it in saran wrap. That'll help. It keeps the moisture in, and it also kind of creates a greenhouse effect where if you're able to keep your soil warm, that will help with that as well. But what's really nice is I have my little dome top here, so I can just pop that right on here, and there you go. It's like a little mini greenhouse. You know, it's warm in here today. It's going to be warmer in here today. So that lets the light in, keeps the air warm and the moisture trapped in. So that's a pretty good start. Now, where you want to put this in your house is certainly somewhere where you get light. But again, even before the light, what really helps your germination rates is getting a little heat. I think that's like kind of the hidden secret of seed starting is you want that heat. So some people will put them on top of a refrigerator or an oven somewhere in their house that gets warm. Windowsills are great. Or even if you have a heating vent, you can kind of build some books up and put it right over your heating vent. Something like that. Anywhere where you have a warm place is going to be great. Me, like I said, I really, like to go for products made exactly for this purpose. So I'm going to show you a really nifty product over here. This is a heat mat, and this is what Adam was talking about. The farm uses these. Now they have really, really big ones. This is a nice smaller one for a home grower. It's just kind of a flexible, kind of rubbery heat mat that you can plug in. And what's great about that is it's going to heat your seeds just to the right temperature, not too much, not too little. You're going to get them just to the right temperature, and they're perfect because you can just set them right on top like that, plug it in, and you're good to go. Now, you'll also notice this contraption here that I've got my seeds under, and this is, of course, a grow light. Not necessary for you home gardeners. If you've got a nice bright window, you can certainly do that. Don't be afraid to try it out. Again, you might not have the fastest or the highest success of germination, but you can still make it work. Do whatever works for you. Have fun gardening. Don't feel like you need all this. But if you want to try it out, it definitely will help your rates, and it'll help keep you on schedule and keep things moving faster. Now, what's really nice about this grow light that I like is it's super easy to adjust. And I'm going to go ahead and right now, I'm going to lower that light pretty much all the way. And the reason I'm doing that is, again, Adam talked about this, is the more light, the better with seeds. You can light your seeds really for up to 24 hours. Most people recommend about 16 to 18 hours of sunlight, but you really can't overlight your seeds. The more light, the better. And the closer that light is, the more direct it's getting to the seeds, the less they have to reach out and stretch for it. You're going to get really sturdy, strong stems that's really going to, do dividends for your plants in the future. Because if you can get them started off strong, a strong young plant is going to be a strong mature plant. Kind of like people, if you can set yourself up for success, get that light, get that water in there, and make sure your plants are off to a good start, they're going to have a good finish. It can be kind of hard if your plants get a little spindly and you're starting to maybe worry about your seeds. I would say just start over. Don't fret, because really once that happens, your plants are never going to be the same. Like I said, it's just like people. I'll be honest, I sometimes wonder if when I was little, if I had a few more fruits and veggies, I might be a little taller myself. So the more you do for your plants at this stage, the more you're going to get, great tomatoes or peppers or basil plants or whatever, you're trying to grow. So that's really, the ins and outs of it. Light, water, heat, have fun with your seeds. Don't be afraid to try new things. And don't be afraid of failure. Have fun growing new and different things. And yeah, just enjoy the process. It's great to do with kids. It's a great way to share gardening knowledge. I love starting seeds, and it's just a great way to kick off spring. So thanks for coming here today, visiting the greenhouses with us and checking out the seeds. One last thing I'll mention before we leave, which I almost forgot about, and you don't want to forget it, is I'm going to label these seeds here, because when I come back tomorrow and I water these, I'm already going to have forgotten where I put what. And you think, oh, well, once they grow, I'll know what they are. But, even those little leaves are all going to look the same. So I'm going to go ahead and label these, put my labels in, and we'll have fun growing. So that's all the time we have for you today. So we'll see you next month here at Growing Together. And until then, keep on growing.